consumption group, but there was some other things we talked about at that committee meeting as well. So I'll look for, if everyone's had a chance to read the minutes. I think they were circulated to us as well by Steph about 2.5 weeks ago. So,
And 2.5 years ago, both.
so can I get a motion to approve the minutes unless there's questions or amendments?
I'll move.
Oh, and you've got to change 18 to 16 in
Yeah.
the resolution, the computer lights 18.
And then my only question about the minutes, if I may, for the committee is we did have some action items. And I was just wondering, is there a status report? Some of the action items were related to boundary expansions and whatnot, which I don't think anything's happened.
Nothing's, I don't think anything, that's a planning thing, and I
Yeah.
don't think anything has happened yet.
Okay, but they're before council and it's up to.
Well,
I
if
think
if it's Judy in the subdivisions, it's a subdivision approval thing.
Right,
And,
It doesn't go to council.
and
Doesn't go to
it doesn't go to council.
okay.
And I think it's moving ahead slowly.
Okay, and I don't think we've gotten a, clarifying possible conditions and costs yet from the developer.
No, I'm not even sure.
Judy was going to go back to them, I think,
Yeah.
for that lot up the top that
She was.
belonged to Stewart's, and as to whether they wanted to pay the extra. We did, I think, refine the amount.
Okay.
We figured that out at the finance committee, I think, or from here maybe. But the question was, why did he want to pay it
Right,
to hook the lot up, or just the benefit of the hydrants there? So, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, because I think phase one,
Is the bottom bit where the park
yeah, the
is
two
and the.
houses
Yeah,
and the playground, I think,
Right.
that's pretty well all that
Yeah.
phase one is.
Yeah.
okay, and then the only other thing was the fire protection. I saw the fire chief, it's about a month ago. Just make a comment, fire protection seems more than adequate.
Yeah.
For the area, so, okay, so the next, so given that the minutes have been
So,
adopted.
given the fire chief and the comment about fire protection,
Mhm.
September 27th, at the
Come
fire
and be
hall,
fire
at 7
smart.
o'clock, yeah.
I think the one thing about this is I've attended this at a property elsewhere in the province, these kinds of briefings, and one thing is that really worthwhile about the little things you can do around your property that make a huge difference. And they're not big deals, they're just like, people tend to pile up brush over the winter and everything, and with a plan to have a bonfire, and all of a sudden, those things are huge.
There is a bonfire.
Yeah, exactly, at the wrong time,
Yeah.
right, and it's gonna be too close to the house, so stuff like that is basic stuff that people don't realize, so. So we're on to the elections, so 3.1 is we recommend the King Edward Bay Water System Local Advisory Committee elect Mr. Triple X, or Mrs. Triple X as chair.
So we just need someone to nominate someone.
Mhm.
This always makes it quiet.
There's not much in the way of work associated with it, is there? Really?
No, just attending the meetings.
Just attending meetings.
Mhm.
Did you want to do it?
That was a foolish thing for me to do, wasn't it?
You were the first to speak, so.
I wasn't the first to speak. Foolish me, but yes, I'm happy to.
All right, so
We
That's
all
nowhere.
stint.
I'll second. I think everyone will jump on this one.
Well, congratulations, don't let the
Yeah.
power go to your head.
Yeah, I know.
Another
You
promotion.
got the 17 binders he needs to take home and read?
Oh, yeah,
We have the little dolly outside there.
yeah.
Now,
We'll help you to the car.
3.2 is the election of the vice chair. I guess I'm not chair anymore, but
No.
Brian, it's over to you.
Well, no, you carry on. You're, you can do the election of the chair, but you started the meeting, please
Okay.
finish it.
All right, so election of the vice chair, the King Edward Bay Water System Local Advisory Committee elect, once again, Triple X. So we need to nominate someone to be vice chair.
Don did a really good job when you were away.
Curse of competency.
First
Yeah.
confidence.
Sure.
Excellent.
You don't mind me as vice chair?
No, we live beside each other, so that'd be fine too.
Perfect.
No secret meetings in the middle of the night, okay?
No, of course.
So moved. And then the committee remains the same, correct?
Yes.
No changes to the committee?
Yeah.
Okay, and now on to the next is public comments, and the public have left us. given
That's
this is
kind
the
of a
riveting-
comment in itself, isn't it?
This is the riveting part of the meeting, so, so we're on to new business. I put forward a few things, but we've already been through the financial report. Did anybody have any additional questions regarding the financial report?
And just, are we $750 for 2018?
Or 700.
700.
Your
700?
rate structure, you mean?
For
Yeah.
2018, for the bill that we're gonna get in the fall?
You're at
It's the same as last year.
Yeah.
700?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought we had some discussion about
We
trying
had
to
some
boost the
discussion, but we
revenue.
never finalized it.
Oh,
Yeah, because there was gonna be some review of whether it was needed or not. Because we
okay.
were also talking about the as yet connected.
Then the user
Rates.
pay and all that discussion, and I,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I heard Raj talk about it in the Blue Water meeting, and
Mhm.
it's in the pipeline, right?
It's in the, yeah. so
Under
we're looking-
review.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
rates,
So the rates are under review.
the rates are under review.
Well, the whole structure.
Yeah.
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 The last we heard, we're moving towards island equalization, so we're going to try to,
You're hearing that again.
I'm hearing that again.
Mhm.
Okay.
I like that term, island
Island.
utilization.
Okay, I know it's, sorry, it's not on the agenda, and I should have asked to have it placed. So you're doing an infrastructure assessment and review, island-wide, right?
We'll be doing that, yes.
Okay. Is there any talk of doing what Jay Mather calls nature's capital? A review of how much water we actually have on the island? Some sort of hydrological study? I understand they're quite expensive, Bob.
I think Main Island did one, and
But
they.
we're very
they-
different.
Main Island started one, I should say,
Yeah.
and they had a budget, and it was a substantial budget, and
I
they
think
started
would
it,
be.
and they stopped it because it went way over budget.
Okay.
Because it becomes very complex very quickly.
It's like just start writing the checks, almost, you could.
They
That
flow
was-
out like water, huh?
Well, when King Edward Bay was being done, remember all those reports we had done, and people keep saying, well, how much water is in all these different aquifers, and the water guys sort of, well, I can't really tell you. It's not like the big tables you see in.
That'll be
the Midwest
50,000
where you
please,
can
I can't
measure-
tell you.
measure.
Well, I'll just ask about it every year and let it go for
Well-
12 months.
What
But I think I worry about it.
in
That's,
the mine that would show us that we had a problem? Would it be just that the, becomes more and more difficult to top off the tank, or? what
No,
should we
not so
watch
much
for?
that, your production goes down.
Uh-huh.
So over the
Kinda
summer,
year
your
over
production does go down, but then over the winter, and so obviously the water, your groundwater is affected by rainwater.
Mhm.
So then your production starts going back up in the rainy season. And I even noticed that, when did we have that? There was like 2 days of rain, there was hardly any rain though.
that's
It actually made a difference.
really?
Yeah.
Well, we had a lot, it was a heavy downpour for a very short period of time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but it did make a difference.
yeah.
So we should just schedule another parade, so we can bring them. One
Right.
day in 2 months.
So I know this is a diversion, Jonathan. Did Maine think that they had a problem, and that's why they
That's
decided
why
on
they
this?
started it. Yeah.
And we don't, at this point, we
A
don't.
lot of the Gulf, Southern
The
Gulf
Southern
Islands
Gulf
do have
Islands,
problems.
Okay,
I know
I've
Pender
heard that.
Island, South Pender's been talking about it a lot lately, so
Okay.
they.
Because they don't even get the rain we do.
No, oh,
No.
they're.
Okay,
they're-
so-
And they've got a different kind of rock too.
Yeah, they don't get good well water, and so they're mostly above ground, and it's, and it's
Okay.
just not getting replenished.
But it sounds like we'll get some sort of indication that there's a problem.
I'll see if I can find, if you want to read, but Bob Turner, when he was working for Natural Resources Canada, they did a whole water study of all the Southern Gulf Islands.
Mhm.
And there's maps for each of the islands, just, you
Including
know, how. It's on the ferry, the map, I think, but
Okay.
it doesn't really show, but it shows how how the systems work. And he did a very excellent presentation on it. a
Okay,
number
well,
of
next time I
years
see
ago.
Bob, I might just ask him.
Yeah,
about it.
and
Okay.
it was, yeah, he may still have all the stuff,
Okay.
and maybe we'll find it on Islands Trust website too.
Before we leave the financials, though, just to get back to the asset review, just speaking personally, I think that would be really valuable, because if I understand things right, it would help us to know whether the amortization calculations you've been doing are sufficient to what we need for the depreciation of the equipment. Is that my
I think
understanding?
that-
The
that-
amortization wouldn't be
Because
related
it's
to
just,
that.
it's just an
because the
accounting
Yeah, it's
exercise.
just
I
an
think the
accounting.
bigger issue is the actual assessment of, are we replenishing our
In
capital?
the windows.
Yeah.
Yeah, the capital is the bigger issue, because if we're dipping into our capital like
Yeah.
proposed, and as you just showed,
Yeah,
we're not replenishing capital at fast enough rate.
Exactly.
But theoretically, in a business, you book your amortization and you sort of, it's there.
you want me to get that?
No, sorry, so you've got accumulated depreciation that's, built up enough that, built things, so we do the asset management and we'll know how much money we have to start putting away to replace, right?
Yeah.
So it'll be more of a sustainability exercise in terms of what
No, I-
reserve should be at and what are long-term.
It's not your fault, but it's a bit overdue.
So how much is the whole project going to cost?
We'll have to get an RFP because we'll have to,
Okay.
we don't have the resources in-house to
Yeah.
do it. So we'll have to get somebody to do it for us.
Okay. And then we have 40 minutes set aside for the drinking water.
Oh, good.
report.
I'll go through,
Are there any other questions about the water quality report?
I was gonna ask you about hardness, but
Oh, that white flaky stuff?
there's-
the other meeting.
there was the other meeting, somebody got agitated about the,
Oh.
well, you just have to go over and clean her shower for her.
So,
You put a
do
sign
any of you
on
guys
it.
see any white
Residue
residue on
Showers.
Doors and stuff?
in the
Yeah,
kettles and in the
Yeah.
A little,
teacups?
a little,
Yeah.
a little.
Not a lot, and it's
But
easily
still.
removed, but we put a little water softening filter on our house about a year ago. Made a huge difference.
So,
So,
we haven't done that.
Alan's got one as well.
I also have a hot tub though, so I monitor the water in that hot
Yeah.
tub.
Yeah,
And I can tell you it's not hot.
I know, your well water isn't hard.
yeah.
Was
It's not bad at all.
You know. In fact, if I have an issue, it's because it's too soft, and I sometimes have to put hardener in it.
Really?
With the hot tub, yeah.
Yeah.
Because the drinking water guidelines, the aesthetic value is 500. And your wells are 69.3. It's like, for hardness, and your pH is 7.92. It's like, it's not over,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm
I
not
have to
sure.
do almost nothing to the pH. I have to do almost nothing.
Well, the other well is 8, so you're pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, I added three things here which have been partially discussed, but this is one, the first point here, if everyone agrees to discuss it, is something that we've talked about many times ever since we started our merger discussions a number of years ago, which is Blue Water and their consumption levels, and can King Edward Bay continue to sustain their level of consumption with the expansion that was talked about in the November meeting last year and additional properties coming on. Once we get up to 41 properties consuming water, perhaps many of them will be weekenders, but nonetheless summer consumption. Can we stand to continue to sell Blue Water water, and can our system handle it? And it's a bit
Looking for a guarantee here, Bob.
Yeah,
But-
well, I don't think we're looking for a guarantee, I think we're looking to see,
Well,
as
well,
Blue Water
Blue
making
Water-
decisions regarding their capital.
No, they said tough, we're taking your water.
You're gonna.
No.
No, actually, I was at the meeting and they were very grateful. And they are gonna drill a new well.
We're
To
gonna
supply
drill
Blue
wells,
Water.
okay, because that was
Yeah.
talked about
Yeah.
over a year ago as
Well, yes, and it was, I fracked their wells,
Right.
and in the winter, it does produce a lot more, but the production, it just sort of slowed down after about July, surprisingly.
But isn't the real problem if they only have an 18,000 gallon tank for 150 users?
They need more
No.
storage.
Do they just,
No, the problem, the tank is not the problem, the problem is the wells have, doesn't matter if you have an 18,000 gallon tank or a 1,000,000 gallon tank, if your wells don't produce,
oh, so,
you're not gonna fill your,
Yeah, you
But if
needed
you-
an
But if you
equilibrium.
put in a new well that produces, then are they gonna need more place to store it?
More capacity,
see,
storage.
Bob, that's really
no,
told me
not
that there's-
necessarily, because the water can go the other way also, right?
So it can go into the blue water
Yeah.
tank.
So then your
Or
wells
into the
rest,
King Edward Bay tank.
and
Yeah, but that's telling me they have two problems. One is they don't have sufficient supply out of the ground, and
Yes.
secondly, that they don't have enough storage if you are able to increase that supply.
So long as they can get production. though.
as long as you get production, like if it's 18,000 gallons, as soon as it drops down a foot, then all of a sudden the pumps kick on, and if you have that, the pumps can keep that full, then it's not a problem, but it's actually what comes out of the ground.
Yeah, that's the key bit. And
The
how
key
much you-
bit.
And how much you lose in the pipes. And the-
Yeah.
which is the other issue of their older system, isn't it?
Also, I think we have a pretty good grasp on how we are going to be expanding the number of new builds, but how many new builds have there been in the last couple of years in Blue Water?
3, 4 maybe?
Maybe 4 at the most. A lot of them, they smashed the house down and rebuilt the house.
Okay,
There's a new one that come in on Schooner Lane,
you know,
but he doesn't, I don't even think he lives there.
There's one on Captain's that's a replacement.
Yeah,
okay.
and then there's
there's a new
one
one.
way up on the hill that's a new one.
Yeah, they're building on the right-hand side.
Yeah, they have-
Yeah.
On
They have
The east
13,
side or the north side, yeah.
13 unconnected
Lots, yes.
And the big issue with Blue Water may well be that there's a very large parcel of land, and I can't be more accurate than saying it's above Alfred Laura's house. That is
The Menzies lot,
subdividable,
right?
The Menzies property,
Yeah.
yes.
and that's subdividable, and if that does get subdivided, that will bring a whole bunch more. I mean,
But then all of a sudden, as soon as you do the subdivision,
Yeah.
then I'm gonna go, you're gonna have to produce 1.5 times.
Just
what-
like King River Bay.
Exactly like King River Bay.
Just
So
like the new
it's actually
above.
a bonus for them if they did subdivide.
Yeah, because they would get the investment of a new system, wells, Bedrill, et cetera.
so the short answer to why they need our water is because they're not producing enough from their wells.
That's right.
From more wells.
So thank you very much for pushing them along to,
It wasn't me that pushed them on, I
or
think
whoever
they,
it is.
They understand.
You just take the credit, that's all right.
okay.
But I think we do have to be conscious of the fact that, and God, unfortunately, nobody knows what the timetable is, but, you know, there's gonna be further development in phase 1, and then if phase 2 comes online, that's another, 30-something lots? I mean, there's,
So I
now's
have,
the time to get ready for it.
so I had in here 5.4, just additional punitive measures, which I know council is contemplating, in terms of water overuse and water consumption, so I think, do we wanna talk about that now, or is, I know it's in the works, right? Is that correct? Discussion of rates and all that stuff is,
I don't think, well, how am I going to answer this correctly? I'm looking at right now standardizing the entire billing system,
yeah,
and I'll be looking at standardizing rates
For
as well
overuse.
as much as we can,
Yeah.
with recommendation to council.
okay.
So, and then I'd be looking at council and committee for direction in terms of the overuse and how,
Yeah.
what the objectives of the water system.
I think we need to see the new rate system before we can talk
Yeah.
much about
It's
overuse.
true, but within the principle of the new rate system, we could build in something for the recalcitrants. I mean, the issue that we're faced with is that we have limited water supply. It's not like we have a endless amount of water that we're going to charge incrementally for, the more you use, the more you pay.
Right.
You know, we have an end point that.
Yeah, exactly right.
You have an endpoint, and what I can tell you right now is the structure that is in place does not promote conservation.
No,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so where we have people for whom money is no option at all, then we
Yeah,
mind
so,
paying for it.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
the,
So-
they'll pay it.
And it's in the principles of the new charging arrangements that you contemplate at council, that we really have to have somebody to deal with the absolute values that we're dealing with, and the in consequence of financial penalties.
What sort of punitive measures? I mean, you could make it illegal to overuse the water, like a bylaw or something, but
no, I think just.
Just money?
Just money. I think can we structure the rate system such that you have this exponential lift once you get above a certain amount of summer consumption? Because you know, I think there is, as Brian mentioned, there's this willingness to pay if it's, you know, an extra 20 cents a gallon and I only use 700 gallons more. But if all of a sudden we got 10 residents acting like that because money's no object, we've got a problem.
no, I agree.
And so that was why I wanted to talk about it. Once we've seen this new rate structure, is there some way to have some kind of exponential lift on overuse? Especially in the summertime when our system is at its most strain.
They'll take a look at West Vancouver's model, because they do that.
They do that.
And their
it
rates,
works.
they did a rate review very recently,
Okay,
and so
Is it working?
pardon?
Does it work, or are there
Yeah,
still those that
they've
are
seen,
paying?
they've done historical graphs over the
Okay.
last 3 or 4 years, and they've seen, because they have one water system, they can
Yeah.
actually, they, you know, report the results a little bit more accurately, so they've seen water consumption go
Okay.
down over the last
'Cause
5 to 7
Even in
years.
very wealthy neighborhoods where arguably people can just continue paying,
Yeah.
but it was structured in such a way that there's such a
start
huge lift
hurting a bit.
Yeah.
that it really, it pains you.
Progressive.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we
Yeah.
can have the same threshold, that everybody gets X for the flat rate, and then you
Well,
get Y for the
but-
next
but there
bit,
is a-
and then the Z bit
Yeah.
becomes
Because the X,
5 times.
the problem is the X, the way you have now, is still too high, like, a cubic meter a day in Cove Bay, it's like, that's 220 gallons you can just waste. And if you're only here in the summer, well, you only read it once a year, so who really cares? You
But
can
then
really
there's-
give her during the summer.
But then there's the illogic of you're required to prove 220 something a day in order to
Well, I think that,
build or subdivide, so somehow,
Well, you know, at the Blue Water meeting, it became, with that April reading that you had, if
Yeah.
anything, the current rate
that's what I was
structure
looking for.
is anti-conservation, because everybody's just saying, well, May 1st, no, it's June 1st, right? We start
I-
May, so
and
the
there was
life,
one comment
May
made
1st
about
is the
Bay,
meeting.
Right.
where when there's lots of water in the wintertime,
So
they
it looks
fill
kind
their
of weird
storage
now, I have
tanks.
to check it out, that's why I didn't hand it out, but
So they
It
didn't
is
want
so weird.
overconsumption rates in the winter because they were filling storage tanks.
We are talking,
Yeah.
we are taking a very kind of penalizing view of this, but there's also lots of.
I'd rather think of it as an incentivation to conserve. You don't use it to penalize, so you
I think it-
incentivize people to.
Yeah.
But I think it's
conserve.
important to make a difference between the incentives that we might actually use, and of course, you punish people, that's an incentive,
That's
a
right.
negative reinforcement. But the real issue that I want to get to is that there are things that people can do that they should be,
Yeah.
that they could be rewarded for, positively rewarded for. Like, for example, there are lots of people who do have storage tanks, and it would be, and they use rainwater systems, for example.
Well, I've got a rainwater concrete
Yeah.
cistern, and all my gutter water goes into
Right.
that.
I don't have one of
It's
those
like
systems,
water.
and so I'm going to use more water, because if you
But
want
then
water,
you're
you're
gonna
going
be penalized,
So
and
there
if you
wasn't
put one of those systems
wasn't a bylaw in
in,
King Edward Bay
you'll save.
to do that?
You should, well,
no.
No.
Was it?
no, we could positively incentivize that, though, couldn't we?
Because I know John did it up in,
Yeah.
Evergreen too, that everybody puts one in there.
Well, we
I thought
put
it was
that,
okay.
that was a requirement of the rezoning, I think, that John wanted actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wish we
Yeah.
had
But
that.
you see, that's what I think should be a requirement in all new developments.
Well,
And
we
that's
can't-
what, for example, in the
we-
Gulf Islands, that's what they're doing. If you wanna build a new property on Pender Island, for example, you have to put in some kind of rainwater collection and storage system.
But is that to get your building permit, or is that to subdivide?
That's, I think, for new subdivisions. right?
Yeah,
I think
because
building
but if you've
permits-
already got an
Yeah.
existing lot, we
Yeah,
can't
no, you can't touch it.
touch
But
what
it's,
they.
but it's new
But
building.
any rezonings, we
Yeah.
were putting in things
Yeah.
like pervious surfaces for driveways
Mhm.
and rainwater catchment and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Well, a lot of this will be addressed though in the review of the charges.
Yeah.
One hopes, it's
The
a,
other-
it's a
It
principle.
never occurred to me to fill up
other-
my rainwater tank from the mains in April. Great idea. No, actually,
Well, do it in December.
what can I say, there's enough rain, but.
Yeah. But the other thing is, this Fire Smart, one of the
It fills
booklets
overnight
that comes out with that is all about, has a whole bunch of stuff about plants in it, and it tells you how much water they use.
Yeah.
So somehow educating people to put in
I think
low
that's,
water use plants,
Mm,
you know.
okay.
Or, and I was quite happy after I went to the system, because I don't have any garden around my house, and I went, oh, good.
Scotch broom needs no water.
Yeah.
Well, it's an invasive plant.
Yeah, it's quite pretty.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing that, I mean, I agree with Jonathan, I think we should have penalizing rates, and I'd call them penalizing, I'm sorry.
yeah, we should,
Well,
But
the
the
only reason
only
I
thing that
mention-
worries me a little bit is if you have a leak that you don't know, an undetected
Well, I
leak.
think
We've
there's a
got a
separate, we've
policy
always
for
had a
that.
policy.
Yes,
for
and I
that.
know you go to council and so on.
single forgiveness.
No, you don't go to
No, you don't go to council.
It's just, it's,
So you have a leak, we go read a meter and it's like, hey, you got a leak. If we go back and read the meter the next month and he still hasn't fixed it, too bad, buddy, you're not getting that.
Yeah.
There's a
But if
water
he does fix it,
But
if he shows the bill that he actually fixed it,
on a
so
timely basis.
a leak from the water meter to his house, that's what we will forgive. If there's a leak in his house and he's got leaky toilets and that, it's like,
that's,
sorry, yeah, that's
that's
your
your own
responsibility.
responsibility.
So how would you find out about it? Would you phone somebody and
Yeah,
say?
when we go around and read the meters all the time and it's like, holy cow, this guy's using too much, like it's unusual.
Okay.
So we send you a letter.
Well, somebody
Okay.
said that, the guys actually went and knocked on the door the other day
Yeah,
at
they do.
somebody's house, so that's better than sending a letter.
Well, lots of times you
Or-
don't know
or an email.
nobody's there, right?
Yeah,
But a friend of mine in West Van was at a council meeting, I think, in the spring of last year, where they had basically had done the review of what they'd done, which was this kind of exponential rate structure. And it worked basically 3-year review basically said this, you know, because they were grappling with this as well. And they didn't want to put in overly punitive measures, but effectively, you know, they used to have a lot of people who would just pay, right? They just
Yeah,
write a
exact
check,
money,
write a check.
And you'd see
Because-
the sprinkler water running off down the road.
Yeah, and it would be,
Yeah.
it was kind of an incremental lift, they're paying maybe $600 a month, they pay an extra 200, so what? You know, costs half that much to fill up the boat kind of thing, right? But the new rate structure was basically with every additional incremental gallon practically you consume, it gets a big
I
lift.
think in the new scheme, their focus was on actually, I think their rates were at such that the high consumer was not really gonna care, so they were after conservation and
Yeah.
not collecting revenue.
Mhm.
So they introduced a new block rate for people who use very little water to incentivize them to stay in the bottom tier, or the bottom block. Because they felt that their I believe their rate structure was such that the higher users were the people that absolutely didn't care
Yeah.
what their water bill was gonna be, they were gonna consume regardless.
Mhm.
I think Tunstall Bay does that, don't they?
They have implemented the hybrid system.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is
That was
basically an
proposed
incentive
for all
to not
of us.
consume too much, right?
Yeah.
In the inverse, right?
And I think the other
Do both
issue
ends, yeah.
that was raised when we had all the consultations was the people who are here full-time are going to use more water than the
Which they should be allowed to do.
Yeah, which, yeah, and so
Yeah.
using the average based on some of half the houses are here half the time and the other
Mhm.
half are here all the time, gives you an unreasonably low average or something, so
Yeah.
there's some,
That's the challenge, but the
That-
thing
yeah.
is, you know, especially in the summer period, it should be
Yeah.
somewhat, because even people who are here infrequently in winter are usually here.
yeah, so if you just
considerably
did it in the
Well,
summer.
it's fun, you know, I read my own meter for the fun of it. But we had 4 sets of visitors in July, and I was astounded at how much extra
Yeah.
water. And, you know,
But it's
we have a
people who
little thing
don't-
in our guest room that says, no, we don't. You know, they were aware, but just adding 2 or 3 more people to the household, and
Makes a big difference.
the flushes, the showers, the
Yeah.
dishwashing, it's stunning how much more you can use.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for the bill, but I think I'm okay. It was a
Yeah,
surprise.
I don't know.
You know, whatever we put in place,
Space months,
maybe I
they
can
come once a
just
month, not all.
mention one thing, which is that I think we need to avoid
Some reason
something that
July
leads
and Lord is.
a lot of grumbling, which is an idea that there's collective punishment. That is, we get notices that say things like, if the conservation doesn't improve, we're going to have
Everybody's
to.
gonna hurt.
And everybody.
Oh, I
is
said
hurt.
that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I know, but,
I was in a panic then.
yeah.
It's like, I gotta get everybody's attention.
We never did have.
We did.
I mean, both
Yeah.
Don and I are coming from the same place on this, which is other members of our household, who did feel a little insulted, frankly. But we never actually had restrictions, did we?
No.
It was
No.
advisories.
We just advised,
Yeah,
Yeah.
And,
no, I caught that, but,
But somebody that's only using 50 or 80 gallons.
I will say, one thing that
And
people
then being
who are
told-
infrequent visitors to the island, especially guests who come to see us, they notice the signs, which are great.
They do.
The water use signs, right? Those are,
Make the things sense.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, although I think you could be longer, you could say, you know, conserve water or pay more, or get it cut off,
or have no money.
or you'll pay the Burke penalty, right?
Well, I mean, the pictures last year of the low dam, Capilano and stuff, I mean, I think that must have had some impact.
but you know what? We're not affected the same as,
No, but we get all the ads and we see all the TV
Yeah, yeah.
and so people start to think and, cause we noticed this year, the consumption was down compared to last year.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But see,
Yeah.
we don't see it. I mean, the people from the Cove see Grafton Lake, you know, they see the
Yeah.
mud flats
Well,
coming
no,
out.
we just
but-
from reading the meters, the total
Yeah,
amount
oh,
we
I see,
used
okay.
was actually less this year
Yeah.
in the summer than last year.
So
Except for one.
the only final thing I had that I added to the agenda was, should we as an LAC, and maybe we could do this with all the LACs, I don't know, or is this something that council should take on, is long-term planning of these systems in total related to these drought events we're seeing, right? Like, one would argue the summer we just had was unprecedented in terms of the days without rain.
Better get used to it.
But I think, exactly, and, you know, it's been successive summers where you kind of go, wow, that was spectacular.
But one thing,
And so should we, should we start planning the management of these systems with that in mind? And
Does that mean more storage?
I don't know whether it doesn't mean more storage, does it mean more, contemplating more drilling, more wells? Does it mean that, we should start to communicate maybe more actively on the island about maybe, water conservation, using rainwater for certain things, the kind of things that are on kind of an ongoing thing, but maybe we need to get a little louder on some of this stuff so that, so that people, because awareness is huge, right? When people do, as you say, you go year over year, people's water consumption was down because of awareness, possibly mostly because of, the news in Vancouver about the Capilano watershed running low, but,
yeah, some of it, there's a meeting going on right now with John Dowler, David Hawking, and John Reed, I think, is there, about climate change and about the effect that's going to have on new development, I think is what they're talking about. Stephanie know more about it than I do.
Yes,
But the process is beginning, but maybe we could ramp it up a little bit. And I'm not sure everybody sees water usage as a climate change issue, if you know what I mean. They worry about temperature and
for this island, it definitely is.
The practical issue though, I mean, you can turn deserts green, we know that. There's enough water around. The problem is that we are not storing it.
That was what Bob Turner said.
so we are not.
Not storing it.
He said
Yes.
the
We have
issue
to-
wasn't that there isn't enough water, because there is in the wintertime, but we don't
We
have
just-
We
enough.
just
water.
need millions and millions of gallon storage
Or
somewhere.
is it, do we
So
not have?
blast out the lake and.
I was going to say, is the island not itself a huge granite storage?
It is.
It is.
It is.
but
We
the-
think, we hope.
But look at Bermuda, they don't have aquifers and whatever, everybody stores rainwater
Yeah.
in
Well, okay.
concrete
That sounds like we
cisterns
should
under
do
their
a-
houses,
yeah.
so
Research trip.
maybe we need to be encouraging more.
But there are ways of storing large amounts of water that
Yeah.
don't require dams.
Mm-hmm.
No.
You can buy large vessels for it,
Yeah.
ladders for it. And I don't know what they cost or what it would cost to run, but there's an opportunity there perhaps. And for example, we've got land to put it on. Apparently there's no harm to putting such a bladder on top of a septic field, for example. You can store fresh water on the top of a septic field. It's nice and flat, it's nice and clean, not bumpy, doesn't have rocks coming through, nothing's growing there, so fine, you just do that. So there is land already available in King Edward Bay, for example. What would a bladder cost? How much? I mean, those are the kinds of issues we could.
So you want a great big black bladder in front of your house
No,
on the septic field?
No one would see it on the septic field.
If it's green.
Septic field's across the other side of the road.
So the neighbor has to look at
It's surrounded by trees. You can see
You
it.
know the answer though.
Or you do like they have in West Van, and there's a huge reservoir up in Westmount, and the tennis courts are on top of it.
So there are ways and means. That's my point.
If everybody had a 2,000 gallon personal storage tank,
They wouldn't need it.
I mean, if you compared the winter usage and the garden usage, like to the summer, if you didn't water your garden and your sprinkler system.
but I think attitudes are changing. When
Yeah.
we built our house, we just took the advice of the guy who built it, and I have a large area under my house that's just full of gravel. And, damn it, why didn't, now I think somebody would say, no, that's, anyway.
Well, it could be done, but if we're going to do this at a community level, we could, that's one option. Another option would be to incentivize that at a personal level. And are there ways in which we could consider that to get people to move towards collecting rainwater and storing it? Just an idea.
But we'll get Nick Shore to build something next to the boat ramp.
Yes, that's right.
Guy with the energy. No, I think you're right, Don.
But just to finish off your discussion, should we do anything about it? Yes, but I think we have to have a kind of working party
Yeah.
to deal with that. It's not something this committee is going to do.
And the only reason I put it in the agenda here was to ask if council is.
Well, there is a
discussing
climate action, what's the climate action committee, what do they call it?
The
I was on the
environment,
ball yesterday.
Yeah.
environment action.
July
Yeah,
meeting.
and that's the sort of thing, and even, like, we had a lot of people ran out of water last summer, we're bringing tanks in. It'd be interesting to ask the building center how many water tanks they've sold over the last
Yeah.
year.
I've seen the water truck over here a few times.
Oh, this year?
Allied, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, the playground up near us is being watered by you know, the big cubes, which I think is, I just think that's a great system.
So how are they getting their water from?
Good question, probably is not coming over on the ferry. Must-
Oh, maybe they filled the cubes. There's your spike.
Just that, but people with
No,
wells,
I've looked into that.
Oh,
but
okay.
people with wells don't, I might explain Allerts. No, people with wells don't pay for their water, right?
No, like I have a well in my house, no, I
You
don't pay for it.
It's funny, 'cause I was visiting my brother-in-law who's in the eastern part of the province, and he has to pay the province. He has spring water and well water, and he has to pay an annual fee. It's not a,
Oh, well, that's.
Well, maybe
Not a lot,
if he's getting
$400,
surface water,
sorry?
If
like,
it's surface water, we pay an annual fee for our
Yeah.
surface water.
and even individuals, if you have a water license on a creek, I
Yeah.
think it's
Yeah.
You still pay a fee.
Okay, I guess spring
$200
water.
or something
Couple
like that.
$100.
And the spring would be classed as a surface water.
Okay.
So there's my final act as chair.
No.
Call to adjourn.
Good.
No, no.
The two information items, the vital conversations report, if you go onto the agenda, it'll take you, it's a live link, and that's the report that